48 megapixel cameras are clearly the rage these days. We've seen it on the Realme 5 Pro, the Redmi Note 7 Pro, the Mi A3 and even on flagships like the recently launched OnePlus 7T. Now, Nokia is trying to make its break in the budget segment with its Nokia 7.2. The recently launched device promises a 48 megapixel sensor with Zeiss optics, which should make it a compelling choice. But is it really that good? Or at Rs 18,599, is it slightly overpriced? Hey guys, this is Varun from Mr. Phone and this is my review of the Nokia 7.2. Now before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the Mr. Phone channel and hit that bell icon right next to it so that you're notified of all our upcoming videos. We've got some new giveaways coming as well, so make sure you're tuned in. Now then, let's get started. Right off the bat, I have to admit that the most intriguing feature for me was the design of the device more than anything else. HMD Global has been working hard on their design language and the Nokia 7.2 looks absolutely stellar. The device is built out of high-tech polymer composite that's double the strength of regular polycarbonate but half the weight of aluminum. It also features 2.5D Gorilla Glass on both sides of the device that really does feel quite silky. Now it does feel a bit slippery, but not to the extent where it would just fall out of your hands. As for the build quality, while it's good, things haven't gone the way that I expected them to. While it isn't prone to scratches, if you look a bit closer, you'll notice that the bottom section of the camera is a bit dented. That happened in my pocket when I kept the device with my car keys. Certainly, that is not an experience you would want from a phone that costs almost 20,000. Coming back to the design, one thing that needs to be mentioned is the buttons and ports. You get the volume rockers followed by the power button, which also features an LED light inside on the right side of the device. Over to the left side, you get the dedicated Google Assistant button, which is ever so slightly softer than the other two buttons, resulting in a lot of random presses. As a result, I just had to turn off the Google Assistant trigger, which, by the way, can't be remapped either. There's a USB Type-C port at the bottom and a 3.5mm headphone jack up top, which is good to see. You also get a physical fingerprint scanner at the back, which works quite well and is what I mostly relied upon. That's because while it does feature a face unlock feature, it is outrageously slow. Plus, I've always preferred physical fingerprint scanners on the back, so there's that. However, that's me. If you like to use the face unlock feature, be prepared to keep staring at the lock screen for a while. Overall, both the design and the build quality of the Nokia 7.2 are good, but I just feel that the build quality could have been a tad bit better. Now coming on to the displays, Nokia hasn't really disappointed me in the past, and well, the Nokia 7.2 is no different. It features a 6.3-inch Full HD Plus display with Nokia's pure display technology on board. While it is no AMOLED, the LCD display does seem to be pretty good. The color reproduction is great and the content feels quite smooth. Additionally, the content on the display is automatically transformed in real time to high dynamic range for clarity. And yes, for those of you curious, it does come with Widevine L1 certification. In terms of outdoor usage, the display offers a peak brightness of 500 nits, which is actually quite good. As a result, I did not have any trouble in using it outdoors even with direct sunlight on it. One thing that some of you might be concerned about is the bezels. So even though there is only a water drop notch at the top, the entire frame around the display is pretty thick. Now to be fair, at first it did feel a bit weird, but with only a couple of hours in, it was easy to forget about the bezels. In terms of software, Nokia's devices have always been super clean and completely stock. The Nokia 7.2 comes with Android 9 Pie under the Android One program. While software updates haven't always been on day one, Nokia's history of software updates is pretty good and I expect the same to continue with the 7.2. Also, the company has shared its update schedule for its devices and as such, the Nokia 7.2 should receive the Android 10 update by the end of the year. There's absolutely no bloatware here and everything is completely stock. This also means that there isn't anything special going on here to talk about. The Android experience is clean and neat, with nothing out of the ordinary happening here. Nokia has highlighted the cameras of the Nokia 7.2, which features a triple camera setup at the back with Zeiss optics. Reading off the spec sheet, the primary sensor is a 48 megapixel sensor with an aperture of f1.79 coupled with a 5 megapixel depth sensor and finally an 8 megapixel f2.2 wide angle sensor. On paper, this does sound good and on par with most of its competitors. But if there's one thing that smartphone cameras in the recent times have taught me is that the hardware is only part of the experience. The software and all the post-processing that comes along makes a huge difference, and well, that is clearly shown here on the Nokia 7.2. On your screen now, you can see some camera samples taken from the 48 megapixel standard shooter on the Nokia 7.2. Mind you, the images you see are 12 megapixel images resulted from pixel binning. As expected, the images have a good dynamic range and there is plenty of structure and detail in the images. Also, look at the colors, they feel quite raw. Now sadly, that is where the analysis reveals something quite weird. So with each shot I took, I also captured a wide angle shot just to compare. Interestingly, the wide angle sensor not only offers a higher field of view, but it also produces colors similar to the real thing. Sure, there is a slight sense of saturation, but the colors are still pretty close to the real thing. On the other hand, the results produced by the standard sensor either washed out or quite warm. Yes, the images can be fine-tuned manually later on, but the out-of-the-box results are enough to raise a few eyebrows. The experience isn't that great in the portrait section either. Usually, with a dedicated depth sensor, you would expect better portrait. While Nokia gives you the option to control the bokeh, the end results just don't feel that good. It goes to a point where the background looks really fake and nobody wants that. I would rather keep a standard shot than using the portrait mode. Now, I am a big selfie fan and the Nokia 7.2 comes with a 20 megapixel selfie shooter. The performance in terms of selfies wasn't actually that bad. In fact, it was pretty good to be fair. While the details aren't as good as you would want them to be, the color reproduction is pretty much spot on. That said, the bokehs still look bad and I don't think I'll be using that a lot. Now when you dim the lights, the experience just dropped down too low. Yes, there is a night mode on the Nokia 7.2, but honestly, it's not that good. The results feel weird, to be fair, with a massive increase in the contrast and highlights being blown away. However, I will give credit where it is due, which is that the Nokia 7.2 takes some stellar images in the Pro mode. Basically, if you know what you're doing, the Nokia 7.2 can take some great images using the portrait mode. However, that mode isn't for everyone, and most of the general consumers wouldn't be too impressed by the camera's quality. Talking about the speakers, the Nokia 7.2 features a single speaker on the bottom right of the device. Despite being a mono setup, not only are the speakers loud, but they also have a lot of clarity in them. Yes, the bass isn't that high, but almost everything else was good. Probably the only thing that let down the audio experience was the placement of the speakers, which was to be expected. At that location, it is way too easy to cover the speakers with your hands, especially while playing games. That said, at least there is a 3.5mm headphone jack here, and Nokia also supplies a pair of earphones in the box, which are decent enough. As for the call quality, I used both a Jio and a Vodafone SIM here, with Jio in the primary slot. In terms of connectivity, there weren't any issues per se, and I never experienced any call drops. The earpiece here is quite wide, and I was able to hear the other party on call quite clearly, even if the surroundings were loud. Okay, so if you've been following the budget segment for a while now, you would know that the hardware game has been getting fierce day by day. We have processors like the Snapdragon 730, the 712, the 675 and even the 665 in a price bracket from Rs 10,000 to Rs 20,000. As such, the Nokia 7.2, which features a processor that is the Snapdragon 660, which was launched way back in early 2017, feels quite weird. Now, I'm not saying that the 14nm chipset is a bad option. It clearly holds its ground in the benchmark tests. Coupled with up to 6GB of RAM and 64GB of internal storage, the memory quota is decent too. However, it is just not up to the standards of the current market here in India. In terms of performance, the device did feel a bit sluggish at times, which is mostly due to the animations. Thankfully, enabling the developer options and turning them down to 0.5x does make the overall experience a bit better. That said, there is still a slight delay in app launch times, and smartphones in the same budget do perform better. In terms of gaming, I played PUBG Mobile on this and the game ran quite smoothly. Now, one thing to note however is that the game was running on medium settings at a higher frame rate, so there is that. Overall, I would have said that the performance of the Nokia 7.2 is decent had this been 2018. Sadly, this is 2019 and smartphones in the same price segment offer much better performance than the Nokia 7.2. The Nokia 7.2 comes with a 3500 mAh battery that seems just about right for a device with its specifications. My daily usage features a lot of WhatsApp and Instagram, coupled with listening to music on Spotify, while also watching a couple of videos on YouTube. Oh, and let's not forget, a game or two of PUBG Mobile in between. Now, in my testing, I was able to get slightly over 6 hours of screen on time, with the device managing to last the entire day. Now, while that is good, it certainly isn't remarkable. It basically meant that once I got home, I still had to plug it in for charging if I wanted to watch a couple more of YouTube videos. Speaking about charging, the Nokia 7.2 comes equipped with a 10-watt fast charger. Based on the number, calling it a fast charger doesn't sound that good, but interestingly, it happens to be quite fast. The charging rate is quite linear and you get a 1% increase in a charge every minute. As such, it takes exactly 90 minutes to charge from 1% to 90%. However, after that, there is the trickle charge and the device takes an additional 17 minutes to fully charge to 100%. Honestly, that is quite impressive and it leaves hardly any room for complaining about. So, is the Nokia 7.2 worth it? In a word, no. In a couple of more words, at 18,599, no. In even more words, maybe. So you see, if you want a device that looks quite unique, has a really premium feel to it, and you are comfortable with shooting mostly in the pro mode, the Nokia 7.2 has a lot to offer with a decent value for money. However, for most users, there are much better options out there. For Rs 15,999, you can get the 4 plus 64GB variant of the Realme XT, which not only has a quad camera setup that is reliable, but also features a Snapdragon 712 SoC that is pretty powerful. If you don't mind a bigger notch and want a clean stock experience, even the Nokia 8.1 is available at a discounted price of just Rs 14,499 with a Snapdragon 710. If a 48 megapixel sensor is of the utmost importance, the Redmi Note 7 Pro is a good option too. It comes with a bigger 4000 mAh battery, a 48 megapixel sensor, and a Snapdragon 675 SoC, which is slightly better than the Snapdragon 660 here, all for just Rs 12,000. In all fairness, while the Nokia 7.2 is a good device, it just doesn't match up to its competition, and the price point only makes it harder to recommend. Maybe if Nokia would have sent us the cyan green version of the Nokia 7.2, I might have liked the device a bit more. Actually, if you are planning to still buy the Nokia 7.2, make sure to get the green color variant only. Well, that was my take on the Nokia 7.2. What do you guys think about it? Make sure to sound off in the comments below. Well, that's all from my side, and I'll see you in the next one.